Are you doing this also YouTube or just
We're YouTube and
Facebook?
Facebook. Yep.
Okay.
So welcome back, everybody. All 0 of you right now. I'm sure people will tune in as time goes on. But we wanted to continue the conversation around the cookbooks, and there's quite a few that we skipped over in the main show just because we were already at close to 50 minutes, and I try and keep the shows, them tight, around 30 to 45 minutes. So you see, I did a terrible job today with that. But food is so interesting, and it's something that, I mean, we just ate a crap ton of it in Thanksgiving, and so it's right there on the foremost of my mind, and it's interesting because there's so many people that I just saw a study that said that cookbook sales were up year over year in 2021 by 42%. So
COVID.
Well, that's the understanding, right? But I mean, you could have just as easily gone to YouTube, right?
Right.
But not a lot of people were creating content back then, and forget about the live shows, right?
Yeah, and I think with some of the content that, and you've seen them before too, it's the what do you call focus or the attention span? Sorry.
Yes.
So because like you just pointed out, doing 45 minutes, hopefully we kept 3 or 4 people who were watching live through the whole thing. But oftentimes when you look at all the analytics and such with YouTube and all, they start telling you if you try to crack the system or hack the system, it needs to be like less than 2 minutes, and it's got to change every 2 to 5 seconds. The image has got to change.
Right.
And so if you're really trying to learn to cook a authentic Louisiana dish, which oftentimes they are not quick dishes, they are slow cooking dishes, and with and I say multiple steps as in there's probably at least 5 steps easily with the prepping and all the other stuff. And it's hard to kind of throw that, because I've made some of those videos, as you've seen, just with even packaged products, and try to hit the highlights and don't add any of the personality to it. And so what ends up happening is that it's easy to miss things on how to do it.
Yeah.
And I've done some detailed ones too. I did the one that when I did that Meliton radio show on Monday, and the host had actually, I'd sent her it was John Folse's cream or Meliton soup, and I think it's like 10 minutes it took to break down the steps, but she complimented me on it because I had actually tried to show the steps in enough detail for everybody who was doing it from scratch to know how to do it. Right. So I think that's one of the things that a cookbook allows you to have, is if it's a good cookbook, it'll have that detail. And what I've noticed over the years is that not all and too, not all cookbooks are created equal.
Nope.
And there's a certain level, I think, of, I'll call it kitchen or culinary skills that you must have already to do certain things. Now, thankfully, we have more access to knowledge that we can get at our fingertips than our grandmother had trying to learn some stuff. If she wasn't
all
taught
word
it.
of mouth, that was the way it worked. I mean, that was one of the things. The specialties, what made them specialties was the fact that recipe existed in one person's head, maybe 2, and that was it.
Yeah. So you alluded to the fact that with some of the books have sections. The Paul Prudhomme cookbook is one I think about, and and John Folse's cookbooks, encyclopedias. They have sections that teach you how to make the roux, how to make the stock, how to make the different type of what they call those. There's like sauces, certain type of sauces, veloutés and such like that. Base sauces, I guess, and they teach you all those, or even how to put the ingredients together, and so you can reference those type of things. So if you go into to cook a recipe and it calls for all these things and you're thinking, okay, it says it takes 45 minutes. Well, then the thing about it is that if you haven't done the pre-steps with certain stocks and things, it may take 3 times that amount of time.
Exactly.
But anyway, that's when I think the people who do a good job at making cookbooks try to put that detail in, try to take us along on that journey of how to cook, and hopefully also include enough detail and pictures that and stories that keep it interesting. And then especially once you it's almost like a badge of honor when you finish a tough recipe. I mean, I made crawfish bisque with my mom one time, and we talked about that, Grandma and Amy making it, and that is a tough recipe to do just because time consuming. So it's
right.
Once you've done it, it's like, I've done it.
Yeah. Speaking of which, my experiment with the spinach madeleine, and this came from this was the first River Road recipe book, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that in a second, but this was, let's see, can I get it to play? Of course. Let me see here. I love sometimes how the computer just decides to indiscriminately delete shit right before you're about to get started here. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. Okay, there we go.
Mm-hmm.
And
looks good.
Yeah, it actually turned out really well. So the ingredients, you can always come back to this and watch the recipe again, but this is in the River Road Parish's book, and it's actually probably what put it on the map.
Yep.
We used a bit more spinach than was called for in the recipe, but just because that was 2 packs. But
there's spinach liquor there.
Spinach liquor, and it was good. Chopped up some onions. This is the jalapeno pepper jack cheese. I got that from Trader Joe's. Some evaporated milk, which was incredibly hard to find. I have no idea why.
Really?
But yeah, it was hard to find. And some Worcestershire sauce, some garlic salt. The one thing that we did not have, and we just put more regular salt in, was the celery salt. So we just put more regular salt in there. And I don't know.
What I usually have, I have some celery seed, and I'll just do like half of celery seed and half salt.
Right. And that works too, right? It's just basically the same thing. This thing kind of came together quickly. You had your kind of slightly lumpy but melted cheese sauce essentially, and then we just dumped the spinach in. And just kind of folded it in, just kept folding it in. And it was, over time, it slowly developed that look. All the green was coated with some form of cheese. And then we put it in a casserole dish. Now, we did it the same day, Thanksgiving Day, so we didn't have time to let it sit. But this is what it looked like.
Looks good.
Yeah, man, I got a live shot of it right now. And then we put some breadcrumbs. These were tossed in some melted butter. And then we tossed that in the oven. I think it was 20 minutes. For us, it was 20 minutes because it was already hot, and it was really more to crisp up the breadcrumbs than anything else.
So Ben made a comment there about making sure to crush the celery seed to make celery salt. So that's a good point.
Yeah, that is a good point.
I heard an interview with this woman probably about 10 years ago, and I think she's actually been married 2 or 3 times, and so her name was totally different than what it was in the book, and I think what it was is that she just was putting together some sort of creamed spinach recipe. I don't know if she just threw that cheese in there or how. I'd have to go back and find the interview, But it has become such a success because that book came out in 1959. That first edition of the River Road, and there are at least 4 editions that I'm aware of. 1 and 2 have, or 2 is basically like the next. I wouldn't call it even a generation. It's probably so many other members of the group came along in the early 70s and they made that.
Right.
I think the 3rd one my sister's got, and I think it actually has a low fat.
Yeah, it's
healthier.
It's a healthier version.
Yeah. And if I'm not mistaken, our cousin Mickey's wife, Julie, has a recipe in that one.
Huh.
I don't know what it is. And then I've got a copy of the 4th version, which has got a lot more colored pictures in it. Those first 2, at least I know, are mostly text, but very simple text and recipes. They don't have maybe as many stories, but I know that the first one, it talks about how men like to cook, and then they have planning meals for like a group of over 100 or 50. And so those type of books are very unique because they don't just get the recipes and list ingredients, kind of like Ben was talking about too. I mean, they add to the whole thing of trying to. They all have to have a certain hook to make it interesting.
Sure.
And the women of Baton Rouge. So the 3 on my book or on my list were the River Road, which is the Baton Rouge area.
Right.
And then we had Talk About Good, which has a 1 and 2, and that's Lafayette. And then the Plantation is the one from the New Orleans Junior League. And that's a different one. But they are all, like you said, I would recommend any of those for somebody who's starting out, wanting a good list of South Louisiana recipes.
Yep.
Any of those type of books.
Let's see. So, speaking of which, of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't have. It's going to go this way. Got to go to the opposite of the way. But this is had a little heated up for me in between, and it's already starting to get cold because it's so freaking cold here. But that's it. And man, it's so good. It's so and definitely we're 2 days past Thanksgiving now. And this is the shizzle right here. I'm really happy with this. So
yeah. And like you said, for those who weren't in the first part, when we have our Hubble get-togethers at the holidays, this is one of the dishes that were served. Somebody would bring it as one of the covered dishes to go with the meals.
Right. As long as you didn't get relegated to bringing in the solo cups. You were, people had somewhat of a respect for your culinary abilities. Why don't you bring the utensils?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, let's get over to these other books.
Yeah.
So.
Yes.
So this is River Road Recipes, and the original. And again, like I was saying in the main show, the spiral bound books, especially cookbooks, they are incredibly useful because you don't have to crack the spine just to get to the recipe and keep that book open. And, inevitably what happens is you're in the middle of adding an ingredient or doing something and the book flips. Right, with a traditional spine, and this one having these, you can just open it up, and usually the recipes, unless they're really intricate, they're 2 pages.
No more.
Yeah, and that's really useful. Really useful.
Yeah.
I don't think people give much credence to the fact that there was a lot of thought that I think was put into that. Go
ahead.
No, well, even the more complicated recipes, 2 pages.
So as a chemical engineer, part of what I have to do is write out operating instructions. And so when you do that, you have to think about all the steps. And that's essentially what writing a recipe is you need to convey not just the list of ingredients, but how to use those ingredients and when to use those ingredients in the right step and to add enough detail. And so some of the church cookbooks, for example, the one from St. Catherine, which is the Hubble family church there in Metairie. I found my mom's mother had submitted a couple of recipes in there, and I replicated those on my YouTube channel. And there's one of them, can't remember I think it's called butter beans and shrimp. Anyway, there's a part where it calls for sage, and I made it, and all my aunts and uncles and my mom, they all looked at it like, Mama never used sage. I was like,
I'm going off of what you guys gave me.
Yeah. So the point being there is that, somewhere in the book creation, either she wrote down something and didn't mean to put it down there, or with the women who were creating these books, because this was all this was early in the 80s, so this was all digital documentation where it was easy to cut and paste.
Right.
Somebody may have mixed something up, may have added it. And so the editing is just as important, I should say. And I think talking to some chefs and other cookbook authors, they've even mentioned that oftentimes they really can't actually cook all these recipes ahead of time and vet them out. They've done them, but they can't do every single one. So you'll even see, and there's some big name cookbooks out there who, if you do their recipes and you go back and you make it and you find out they're too salty, you go back and write to the author and they'll admit, like, I made a mistake. That should have been a teaspoon, not a tablespoon. So it's not foolproof, but
right.
If you've done enough cooking, you'll catch some of those things, and they're appreciative, actually, because one famous guy sent one of my uncles he did some andouille, and it turned out that he put too much salt in it. And when he told the chef, hey, he sent him a pound of andouille to replace the one that he had screwed up because the recipe was off. So and corrected it hopefully in the subsequent editions.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But anyway, but your point, yeah, it takes a lot of forethought to put these out and lay them out in a timely manner.
Yeah. And the River Road, I would say that amongst all the homes in southern Louisiana, the most prominent book is this book.
Yeah, I agree.
It is by far, and they've sold over 2 million copies, I think, of this book. It could be more. But they've put. They definitely are doing well with this book, and it does have some significant recipes in it. That again, I a lot of these, like yesterday. In the absence of celery salt, I would have freaked out and been like, "Oh my God, what do we do? What do we do? We don't have this thing." And through my time in the brewing industry, especially when it came to hop additions, there are thousands of hop varieties that are used amongst the different beers that are out there, and one of those. One of the problems that we faced as brewers was shortages. And so there are charts on the web, replacement charts.
Yeah.
If you have this, or if you need this, then these are suitable replacements. Now, it's not identical, but especially on some of the newer, like specialty hops that produce certain types of unique flavors, not just bittering hops. But in any case, I didn't when we didn't have celery salt. It was just like, add more salt. It was that simple. I mean, you think about how little celery salt goes into that recipe. That's another factor. If it's a major contributor, then it's like, okay, we can't supplement this. But if it's a teaspoon,
right. That's an excellent point. And I mean, that's the other part, like we talked about, looking on the internet for things, because there's a lot of good substitutions you can use today. And, but you're right. Unless if you're trying to make crawfish etouffee and you didn't have any crawfish, then it's not crawfish. You can substitute shrimp. It'll be shrimp etouffee or something. But,
right.
But you're
Which
right.
is
The proportion
fine.
and the amount, you have to use that judgment.
You do. Okay, so let's.
And this has 2 Melitong recipes too.
Okay, I would be surprised if it didn't. Plantation cookbook.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with this one.
This is a really good one. Of the 3 that I showed, this would be my top pick of those. Even above, I say it's a tie between this and River Road. What Plantation offers you is it's a hardbound book. Yeah. It came out in 1972. The first, I think it's like 200 and something pages, checking my notes, 220. But the first half is really stories about plantations in the surrounding New Orleans area and a little bit of a history. So where this book might really be strong for somebody is if you've got someone who is interested in cooking, but also interested in history and, maybe would like some pretty solid recipes.
Right.
And what I've gotten from this one is the pepper jelly I make is the basis of that recipe is found in this cookbook. Grits and griots that we make, my mom based her recipe off of the one in here. And I have a friend of mine in Mobile who's from Louisiana, and her grandmother's recipe is basically the same recipe that's in here.
Mm-hmm.
So I know 2 people that use this book for that. There's the shrimp remoulade that I made a couple for Mother's Day came out of here. So cheese straws. There's a lot of good ones out of this one as well. So I would definitely. This is definitely another good one that I would keep in the top 2. I was trying to find out my extra notes there, but it only has 1 Melitong recipe.
So bump it down. Minus half star for only one.
Yeah. I'm trying to touch all the bases, but all of these have also a good variety of different gumbo recipes and jambalayas. So
yeah. Well, see, and that's the thing though, is that a lot of people when they get a book like this, they expect certain things like a gumbo recipe and a jambalaya recipe, and maybe even etouffee if you're getting fancy, right?
Yeah.
But it's a lot more than that. I mean, it's just something that people look for. So if the Plantation Cookbook has some of those, for lack of a better term, standards in them, then all of the extras that you're talking about, those are always, those are exploratory recipes for a lot of people. I think, the problem is with any of these books is people tend to get, myself included, worried about one of the fundamental bases for a lot of these dishes, and that's a roux, right? Because there are people that obsess over the color of the roux to the point where, if they had an opportunity to have like a color card and they could just jam it down in the pot and go, okay, it's the right color, that you would know. And I don't know if, I mean, obviously there's not cooked enough and then burnt to hell, but in between there, you get differing levels of I don't know, burntness, I guess. It's but the melanoidin activity that exists when it starts to get higher and higher is going to change the complexity of the roux. It's going to change the flavor profile, but
and the thickening properties too.
Yes, but it gives people anxiety about tackling those recipes, and we've got this mix that you sent, and I'm looking forward to actually, what I was thinking about this, and for just a few folks that are listening, and I think what we should do is take some of our turkey and go grab some andouille and do a turkey andouille gumbo with that base that you sent me. You have some.
We could now. Yeah, I may have to get some more turkey.
Wow, you guys went through that much turkey?
Well, I was only 8.5 pounds of breast meat.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And we had 6 of us all together. So, or 7, we had made a to-go plate for somebody. But, no, and that's an excellent point. I would be fine doing that because I do like to, do that after Thanksgiving. Sometimes I'll even just go buy, if it's the turkey breast or a small, breast, 4 or 5 pounds like you would do for chicken gumbo.
Right.
But yeah, that certainly would be a definite good thing to try with this mix that we're going to talk about in the coming week. And I think it's also timely due to the fact that as you talked about in the first part, it's Christmas time now, and the gumbos. Well, as soon as anything gets below 50 degrees, it seems like in Louisiana it's gumbo weather.
Right.
So it's been gumbo weather for the last month or so, but I think especially at this time, and when you have opportunity for families that's visiting or whatever, it's a good opportunity for gumbo. And like I said, turkey gumbo is a tradition after Thanksgiving tradition. So definitely we can do that.
Just got to find some good sausage. But I'm digressing here. But we can talk offline if you want to call it that. The corporate way of saying we'll talk when we're not on air. About good on Dewey, suggestions, because there's I can't most of the stuff I'm gonna have to source from back home. I can't get good on Dewey here. It's made in California. It's crap.
Yeah.
So, okay. So, after Plantation, we did Frank's book.
We talked about Frank. So, La Bouche Creole. This is one of the Creole books we were talking about.
Right.
And he actually had 2 of these books, La Bouche Creole 1 and 2. And Leo Sonnat is it's kind of interesting because I think his cross path was our grandparents, because he lived about a mile away in Metairie.
Huh. Okay.
He was like he was like a radio announcer and a TV announcer, but he was also a politician, and he was also on the Jefferson Parish School Board. And
sounds like our grandfather.
Yeah. And so I think he in the 1960s, so he would have known Grandpa. And and in fact, my dad, when I first got the book, he would tell me that, he lived right not too far away. I think it was on Metairie Court or something like that.
Okay.
But what's interesting with this book is that he's got a lot of stories in general of his, he used the same term that I call my mama, my mother's mother, mama. He used that term, but his recipes would have been more of when we talk about Creole definitions, a lot of people associate what a lot of people discern as the Creoles of color. But if you go back to the original term of Creole was the firstborn children of European, not inhabitants, but when the Europeans first came to the United States, the firstborn children would have been Creoles, and so they designated Creoles as that term. And so you had a whole culture going back to the early 1700s, and in fact, the first designated Creole was actually in Mobile, because Mobile was the first French capital of South Louisiana, or of Louisiana,
right?
Colonial French. So, but it also the cooking of the Creole style is more influenced by your European type of styles and ingredients, and so you would have had more of the Spanish and some of the even like more of the seafoods, the saltwater type of seafood recipes that you would see. And so some of more of I wouldn't want to call them elegant, but the things that New Orleans or old New Orleans recipes were known for, even though they were called French, were probably really more Creole style.
Okay.
So that's what you have with his book here. And it's a pretty good, solid book. I think it came out in 1981. He actually has 4 military recipes in there, but
you know what I got to say? I'm just impressed that you went through each and every book and tried to see how many Militone recipes they had.
When I started looking I started looking through it and I thought, what the hell, I might as well. So it's appropriate with you wearing your Meliton shirt.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I'm like, representing.
Yeah. But so, like I said, this one is a good one. It has more hand illustrations than anything. It's, some of these, I think these books of the 85 I've gotten, some people would probably argue that there have been certain other ones that should have been on there when they get through with the list. But, in the interest of time and giving people a cross section of things to look at that they may want to explore. And today, the advantage of, and I'm sure with the code you've got there, you ought to be able to go to Amazon, and a lot of times they have look inside, and you can flip through these pages and you'll get an idea of what the recipes look like, what they call for, and if it'd be something that you or whoever you're giving the gift to would enjoy. And
Right.
And so, like I said, if you wanted to learn a more of a cross culture, not cross cultural, cross section of Creole cooking, this is one example that would give you some of those classic Creole recipes.
And of course, Ben had a comment there. So I guess Ben knows you pretty well.
Yeah, Ben does. Thank you, Ben.
Okay. Let's see. Let's go on because we got more books to cover here.
Oh yeah.
Now this one interested me, the Picayune Creole Cookbook.
Yeah, this one is really a neat cookbook because this, I don't know what printing it's in right now, but it was originally written in 1900. The Picayune being the old newspaper,
Right, yeah.
from New Orleans. And then when we grew up, it was the Times-Picayune,
yeah.
then Times-Picayune States Item, and now it's gone.
Yep.
Ain't there no more.
Yeah, now it's part of the Advocate.
Yeah.
Which is
And so,
Acadiana, all this kind.
Yeah. But what I was reading up on this one, which had been a while, that, back in the early, especially the 1920s, they went through a period of time where there was I think they must have been when they first hired women editors and kitchen editors and such to come up with menus. So they'd have things that they would showcase during the week, and, tomatoes, Meliton, whatever, things that were in season. And they would challenge the readers to either come in and submit recipes for the contest. Excuse me. But I think the premise of this book was that about 1900, I think a lot of the recipes that the folks who, going back to the history of the enslaved and such, a lot of the cooking was done by African Americans.
Right.
And so there were a lot of recipes that, even if they were Creole, as in European Creole, they were, John Folse uses the term, the black hand that stirs the pot. That was their, not contribution, but they refined these recipes. They created and honed them to where they became what we have as Louisiana style. And so what they were realizing is that, of course, with the change in times, is that they was also the loss of this knowledge, kind of like we were talking about people who learned how to cook from one person to the other, and it wasn't written down. And so there was a big push, I think, by the Picayune to capture these recipes. So they went and they captured a lot of these things from these women who were now in their 50s through 80s or older, who had been enslaved, and they put down the basis of this cookbook. And it's a big cookbook. It's got 634 pages.
Wow.
And it's huge, and it encompasses all kind of things that you really don't ever cook today. But what they've done in more recent editions is that they will, if it said something like, if there's some certain terminologies as far as a scoop or something, well, they would define what a scoop would be, because they went through and said, well, this is equivalent to a cup and a half or something like that.
Wow.
So,
Okay.
So there'll be things that, just like Leon Sonyat's book had one group of Creole recipes, this one will take you back as the basis and the foundations of a lot of old ones that you probably won't find anywhere. So if you were trying to duplicate or come up or just see how it was done, the evolution of it, this would be a real good one. And it's really interesting because it also has like suggested menus in the back for an economic, how do they put it? Like if you were kind of a modest home or if you were a wealthier home, they'd have like Christmas menus or, and these menus are incredible. My dad would always laugh because I'd read it to him. It'd be like fried croaker and grits and stuff like that for breakfast on Christmas Day. And then you'd have like 3 other big course meals throughout the day. So it's an interesting book. I definitely think people would enjoy it if you're a fan of history and historical cooking.
Yeah. Well, the cover, even alone, that cover just kind of popped at me. I was like, whoa, okay. So this is, yeah, it looked unique, and it's cool to hear. I'm going to have to take a little deeper dive into this one. This one is available, like all of them. These little QR codes next to the name, they all change because I went through each and every one, and I found a quick link. So if you're looking to pick these up or learn more about them, you can just scan that QR code. But again, we'll post these at the description. So if you're catching this on the after or the replay, it's already up there.
But unfortunately, Melitone recipes. This one.
Darn it. Okay, so what about Dookie? Did you do
the
some
Dookie Chase? So
yeah,
a lot of people are probably, if you followed any type of Louisiana cooking and especially food network stuff in the last decade or so, you're familiar with Leah Chase. And Leah has been really kind of the face or the queen of Creole cooking for the last, she was probably that for the last 40, 50 years, easily. She was a strong advocate, civil rights. This artwork on the front is she was really into the arts. And she grew up in Madisonville, and she came to New Orleans and kind of turned around her in-laws' restaurant. She wanted it not to just be a kind of a place for sandwiches and just getting beer and such. She kind of wanted to class it up. And so she slowly over time created what you see now at Dookie Chase.
Mm-hmm.
And that her grandchildren and children are still holding up the foods and the practices that she had. So this book came out, I think, in 1990, and she has a lot of good little stories about different things. Plus, it has a lot of her classic recipes. She's always known for her gumbo zerbs, her green gumbo, which is served on Holy Thursday, and that recipe's in there. And I've actually made it with her recipe in there. Fried chicken is another. Her fried chicken recipe is also something that is renowned, and it's in this book as well. So she has some of the little artwork, but a lot of the stories. Let's see. She passed away in 2019, and she was almost 100 years old.
Yeah.
But her grandson, I think he's Dookie the Fourth. I think they call him Duke.
Right.
He does a show on PBS now. It's like, I think it's called Leah's Legacy. And but anyway, this book is let's see, how many pages did I come up with? I actually didn't get that many, but it's only maybe it's 150, maybe 200. But it's a good solid Creole example of recipes to get there. So any of those last 3, if you really wanted to just focus on the different styles of the Creole cooking, whether it's the Creoles of color or the old Creole styles or the more 80 modern or 80 styles, 1980s, those 3 would encompass, and you'd have a good basis. And if you do like I do, you could open all 3 of them and you could compare the recipes and come up with a very authentic Creole rendition of a certain recipe.
Right. Now, growing up in New Orleans, I don't remember Leah Chase or the restaurant at all.
Yeah.
It wasn't until she died that I learned all about her, but
Yeah.
I never recall going to her restaurant when I was growing up. Did you go? Did your family go? No?
No, I think that, so, a lot of the times, uh, I think it's in the Treme.
Mm-hmm.
It's, I think it's also one of those restaurants that I learned about her really mostly through John Folse and through Poppy Tooker's show in New Orleans.
Right.
And it would have been the early 2000 that she would have got on my radar, but I found her in some older books that I had. But they did a lot of civil rights work from her restaurant, and she had a lot of people like Ray Charles and Lena Horne back in the old days that would come to her restaurant and eat. And so she's been kind of one of those hidden gems, I guess, if you will, for a while. Now we tried to take our daughters there. It was probably about 6 years ago, it would have been before the pandemic, and we tried to get in there to just have lunch during a regular day. And it's an old house; it's not really all that large, and the waiting area is not large, and there was at least probably a dozen and a half people in front of us. And so I really would have liked to try it because I think they had like a buffet or something that day. But it just turned out that, the kids were younger, they were hungry, everybody was kind of getting hangry. So, so we went on, but I've watched her shows and her cooking, on video and some of her philosophies. And it's really, it's stuff that we really enjoyed. And Ben had a good point. She did get a lot of broader exposure after Katrina because her restaurant and Willie Mays, I think Scotch House is what it was called, another place, which is like right around the corner. It's right around the corner. It is. They both got destroyed during Katrina. So that I think is probably really the big thing, is that when all that emphasis was coming back into town, and some of the people, like I said, John Folse and others who were paying her homage, she probably started doing a lot more broader scale media at that point as well. And I think, so that's why you probably, because I don't really remember her either back when we were traveling and visiting there prior to the 80s and 90s.
Yeah. I don't recall it at all. But, there's so many restaurants in that town, and, our family had their favorites. Would you guys ever go to, this is kind of an offshoot, but did you guys ever join us Easter Sunday at the Hilton downtown at the foot of Canal Street? They had like a buffet.
No, because we were usually, we only went back into New Orleans or Metairie maybe once or twice during Easter, because we would usually go Thanksgiving and Christmas and maybe during the summer. Because, back then my dad only had like 2 weeks of vacation. So you had to use it judiciously. So usually Easter would have been really kind of a rare thing. So, but to your point too, and I know like a lot of people say that the other thing about New Orleans is the neighborhoods type of thing, where you would kind of mostly hang out in certain neighborhood restaurants or certain areas. So, I don't know how often, either sides of my family would have gone downtown or down to this area to even visit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's go on. Let's see what else we got here. The New Orleans cookbook.
Okay, this is a recent one I acquired.
Okay.
I've heard people reference Rima and Richard Collins. They were both like professors at UNO. Before I forget, Leah Chase had 4 Melitong recipes in that book. This is a good little book Richard Collins, I think, was a PhD historian. And I think when he started there, he started doing like an underground magazine or review So I know. Are you familiar with Tom Fitzmaurice?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay. So Tom, this would have been kind of like a protege, or Tom would have been a protege to Richard Collins. And so he would have been kind of doing those type of things, and they collected a lot of these classic recipes, and it's really compact, and there's actually kind of the recipes kind of run from one to the other. I like it because it's just so broad in what it covers. It's not, and it doesn't have a lot of pages. It's let's see, how many did I find? 250 pages.
Well, that's still
But
sizable. I mean, it's not nothing to sneeze at.
It's a it's a cookbook. Like I said, I was trying to think of some of the things. Oh, there's a lot of culinary notes, stories, and they have shopping guides in here too. And that's a lot of things that, especially in the early days before the internet, and trying to locate a lot of these ingredients were difficult if you weren't in the area. And as you know, and I know from moving outside the area, it can still be, although the internet has really helped out with a lot of that. But
Still.
I like this one because it's just, like I said, it covers a broad. I put it as, I can't remember if I put this under the Creole. Yeah, because it's more of a New Orleans style. It covers a lot of New Orleans dishes, even though it says great Cajun and Creole recipes. I would think that they're a little closer to mostly, like I say, in the city kitchen. And you can even see on the front, they captured my heart there with the little melitons.
Okay, so what's the recipe count?
2.
Okay. Well, you got 2.
Yeah.
Who knew? I mean, who knew when you were growing up that you were going to become Mr. Meliton? I sure wouldn't have pegged you for that. But then again, I haven't seen you in physical format for damn near close to 20 years. So
as long as they don't take the shape of the melitone, I'm good.
Yeah, yeah. Well, if we keep eating like we keep making, I'm sure that's somewhat unavoidable unless we got to get out and do our power walks. I just don't want to be wearing like sweats and speed walking in the mall with the other geriatric types. But okay. Yeah. So we had Justin.
So now we're in the Cajun.
Yep. So this one, this is another cover that grabbed me just because it's unique. It's not messy some people call it messy. Some people call it busy. This is very much simplistic, and it says quite clearly that there's some seafood recipes in here just by the cover. But then it's called the Mosquito Supper Club, which is another layer of intrigue for me. I've not seen this book, so what do you have on it?
This is a new book. I'm trying to remember when it came out. Let's see. I think it came out like 2020 is when it came out, so it is really new. So this woman is from New Orleans, although I think she said or maybe she's from somewhere on the North Shore. But she's lived in New Orleans for 20 years and is a chef, and I think she cooked for a number of years also in California. But this book is pretty cool because of the fact, and I actually, just as a confession, I haven't cooked anything out of it yet, but what impressed me was the detailed sections. Like we talked about Frank Davis earlier, having different seafood chapters. She's got that in here too, but she also has things like how to clean a soft shell crab, detailed pictures of that. She's got some other detailed information in there that was impressive, a lot of the preparatory steps. So once again, as folks like us have moved further away from the bayous and the swamplands, and we might go out and enjoy a soft shell crab, you can get them. I can get them at Rouse's. But I'm assuming that they're already kind of cleaned. I watched my other grandmother do some for us one time, and it was fascinating because, I couldn't tell you how to do it now. People say go and get rid of the dead man's gills or whatever, lungs and
the
fingers.
lungs that kind of come up on top there.
Yeah. There's certain things you got to do it. But anyway, this book covers that kind of thing. So if you're looking for those kind of get your hands dirty type of learnings and some good recipes, the other thing that impressed me is that one of the things which you and I didn't grow up eating, but I learned about is they have a tradition out in Vacherie called chadron, which is it's a salad. It's thistles. It's the wild thistles that you would see. And if you
Really?
they stand about 4 or 5 foot tall.
Okay.
And they're thick. They're hollow and they're thick.
Okay.
And if you go to pick them, they're thorny, and they got the big bushy flowers on it.
Yeah.
And they talked about when I started befriending our distant cousins, they would talk about making salads with it with just simple oil and vinegar. And I was intrigued because it looked like you're eating celery. And it says I like celery. Well, it's a little different. So in fact, they've got them over here in South Alabama, and I was going to my mom's one day, and I had some leather gloves, and I had what do you call it? Not scissors, but hedge clips or something.
Yeah, yeah.
And I pulled off the side of the road, and I went out and I cut a big one off, and I took it to her house, and I skinned it and cut it up and made a little salad, and it wasn't bad. But anyway, she's got that recipe in here in this book. So that kind of impressed me that, as much as the other ones I've seen, she has that in this cookbook. Now, the one thing that was a little kind of offsetting is that when she had a crawfish bisque recipe, I was like, oh, it's cool. But she puts milk in her bisque, and that's
instead of cream.
Well, traditional crawfish bisque for Louisiana doesn't have any
Oh,
cream
that's
in
right.
it.
That's right. That's right.
That's one of the contentions. People say, well, it's not really bisque because it doesn't have cream in it. So she puts that in hers, and I'm sure it's delicious. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But is that a embellishment of the California style, or the more classic style, or what? Or maybe her family has always done that. I don't know. But I'm not going to falter for that. I think it's worth getting the book and looking at it. And
Well,
it's, like
we should get her on and set the record straight.
Yeah, I'm sure I could find somebody who knows her.
Yeah.
So I gave her points for the thistle salad, but she didn't have any melitol recipes. So
Okay. Well, then, so maybe she'll catch this episode and go, okay, damn it, you're game on. She'll probably come up with something. All right.
Yeah.
Let's. Now I've not seen these books before, and I laughed my ass off when I saw the title. And I was, okay, so who's your mama? Are you Catholic? And can you make a roux? And that almost seems like a loaded question this day and age, whereas, back then it was kind of meant to be humorous. So this is, was it Marcel Bienvenu?
Yeah.
Right?
So Marcel was the one in Cooking Up a Storm, and she's kind of known as the queen of Cajun cooking. And so even though it says Cajun Creole, I kind of put these under more the Cajun style. But
yeah.
I thought Grandma had this book, but the thing about it is the dates on them were after Grandma passed. So
really? So they're relatively new.
Yeah, I think it's like 2006 and 2008.
Huh.
And
okay.
So these are small books together. They're like 250 pages. She grew up around St. Martinville, Marcel Bienvenu.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, she did a lot of newspaper columns, recipes. And so a lot of her recipes have stories with them to begin with. And there's a lot of classic recipes. And she's also done some teaching as an adjunct professor at the John Folse Culinary Institute at Nicholls State. So she just, to me, the title she said came from, in the book it says, she was attending a local play like in 1989. And one of the things that people from Louisiana tend to do is try to figure out how you're connected to each other.
Right.
And I find myself doing that in Alabama.
Yeah.
And my kids, like I said, their hair on the back of their neck stands up when I start talking to somebody, when I start asking those questions. But so I think the story was about someone who had moved off, came back home, but it was kind of like those kind of questions. It was a series of questions in the play. Well, who's your mama? Are you Catholic? Can you make
Yeah.
a roux? Type of thing. Just kind of trying to figure out where they fit in, what box they fit in.
What
so to
social
speak.
order they were part of. It's funny because one of the things that often gets asked in New Orleans, now you didn't experience this because you grew up outside of New Orleans, but
Right.
when people asked you what school did you go to, they were not referring to the university.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's because a large part of the population never makes it to college, or if it's if it's something that it's just it's the way that's before people kind of spread their wings and go outside outside of New Orleans or whatever. That's the last bastion of connectiveness to the community that you might have, and it still boggles my mind. I mean, I still get Jesuit alumni emails to this day, and I don't get anything from UNO. Of course, then again, I kind of made myself scarce with them because it's UNO. Sorry, UNO. It's just you offered. There's a reason why the joke is it's University of No Opportunity. That was when I saw this, that was almost instantly what I thought was, this is just like that question. Where'd you go to school? And I don't know if I ever heard, who's your mama? Yeah. Or well, anyway, this is not really about the cookbook, but the sayings, it's like, I always heard things like, are you part of this family from this place?
Yeah.
That's usually the question that I would get. And there are people to this day that still, and this is the thing, man, I need you around because they're like, are you part of this Hubble family? I'm like, I think we're all kind of related. It's like you said that one episode, you said that we had the northern faction and then we had the southern faction, and we're part of the southern faction, obviously, but they all stem from the same core root of the Hubble family. So no matter how it's spelled, one of our cousins made that damn telescope, or didn't make the telescope. Sorry, it was a scientist, but
it was named after. Right.
Yeah, it was named. The telescope was named after him. Yes, it's like saying Copernicus or something. Anyway, let's move on here. I find this set intriguing, and I think it would be, if there's a way to get like a brand new set, like it's books 1 and 2, that'd actually be kind of a cool Christmas gift, because you're not getting one book, you're getting both in the set, and it's the only ones that are available. Okay, so good old Chef Paul.
Oh yeah. So this book is, as far as a pure Cajun book to me, it was one of the ones I added later in my collection because I think even though we talk about not knowing so much Leah Chase, I think everybody, for the most part, who grew up in the 80s, especially in New Orleans, knew who Paul Prudhomme was.
Yep.
And even through this day. And he's from Opelousas, really came big on the scene with Commander's Palace in the late 80s.
Yep.
And then Cape Halls. And then, of course, his real big claim to fame was Black and Redfish.
Yep.
And so this cookbook came out, I think it was like 84. So this would have been right around the time of the World's Fair, and he would have been on the scene. And one of the other chefs I'm friends with, Frank Brightson, is a protege of his, and Frank worked with him at Cape Halls. And what Frank said in an interview with somebody is that, when they came to writing the recipe, Paul Prudhomme basically had all, I don't know if he just had them all in his memory or just had all these things, but he didn't have anything written down. And it was like, well, you've got to quantify these different amounts. And so that was a real task for him in the beginning. But the book is jam-packed. I mean, let's see how many pages. It's 351 pages.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, it's very instructive because it has the color picture. You're talking about the different roux colors. Have examples of what these different roux look like, how to make the roux, how to make the stocks.
Right.
And then there's oftentimes a lot of things that keep referencing, like if he's making a gumbo, he may say, use 3 quarts of chicken stock. But then chicken stock will be, or poultry stock will be in bold letters. And with the parentheses around it, see recipe. And so it gives you the recipe that you're cooking, plus it gives you the reference recipes. And, but it's got the black and red fish recipe, the original. And at the end of each of the recipes, they even give the seasoning mix that he recommends. Now you can actually find
his stuff.
Even though he's been gone for almost 10 years now, his seasoning blends.
Yeah.
He was very smart in that fact that even after his restaurant closed and he had his books, seasoning blends was something that he was able to sell throughout the world. And so you can get his redfish blackening or his seafood seasoning.
I think we have some downstairs.
Yeah. So you don't have to actually make it all from scratch. But what I like about this one, and I got it used, but it's solid. The crawfish étouffée recipe is really good. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones.
Did you ever go to his restaurant? Did you ever go to Cape Paul's?
No, I never went to Cape Paul's.
Yeah, me either. Well, I take that back. My memory could be, I'm sure if I'm incorrect in that, somebody will correct me in my family, but we may have gone, but with the restaurants down in the quarter, my memory's somewhat hazy as far as where we went. There was, I do remember going to Felix's all the time, and Brennan's, Mr. B's, but I just can't. I was trying to dig back and think, when will we have gone to Cape Paul's? And I don't think I ever did. But yeah, he was a guest chef on a lot of the local television stations, and he was actually quite the celebrity.
Yes, too.
He did. He did.
He was.
Right. Yeah, he was. He was. He was definitely. He was a character, and he was definitely solid with his recipe. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. How's his melatonin recipe count with this book?
His melatonin count is 4.
Wow. Okay, so he's up towards the top. I think the most is 4 so far.
Yeah.
In a book. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So, maybe I need to do like the old, what was it, Gambit or something? The 5 bean rating or something. I need to give it how many melatonin.
I'll do the graphics for you.
Okay.
Okay. So this one I have not seen. Country.
All right.
So tell me about this.
So Nancy Wilson is she's the main author here. And
okay.
She's the mix that I sent you, the Mam Papals.
Yeah.
So she's from St. Charles Parish. And she started like in home economics and teaching courses like that back in the 60s. And I think she graduated from USL or something. And so she actually knows one of my mom's uncles, and some of my mom's cousins actually work with her. And I've met her before and talked to her some. But she has a good representation of the old German Acadian coast or river parish recipes that would have been similar to things Grandma and Grandpa would have known about.
Okay.
So this book is pretty new, actually. I think it came out in 2020. But she's got, let's see.
Yeah, it looks old. Is that
2018?
Like
sorry, 235 pages.
And is that a real fabric cookbook, or is that just printed?
No. It's a simulated image of one.
Okay.
But she took a lot of recipes and memories and stories here from her grandmother and her mother and a lot of those folks that she grew up with. Some old-time sausage recipes. Actually, the hogshead cheese recipe that she has in here is the same as my grandparents' recipe. I don't know. I think one of my mom's cousins gave it to from my grandparents. We've had our pork griots recipe in here and a pork stew. I've made that before. So it's good. It's your more country Creole, German Creole, even though I kind of put it out in that combination that it's not pure swampland, or not swampland, pure prairie Cajun, but it's got what, I don't think any of our relatives on the rivers would have called themselves Cajuns as they would have called themselves Creole, German Creole.
Right.
So this is a good representation of that. It's got some colored pictures in it, and it's pretty good. I think there might even be something like blackbird jambalaya or something in there, some real rare recipes type thing like that.
Okay. Well, that's something worth checking out. So it definitely sounds different from a lot of these other books that we've got on the list here.
And she's got 3 Meliton recipes in there too.
Oh, good for her. Makes David happy.
Yeah.
And we're all about making David happy. So, all right. So here's your buddy here, Chef Folse.
Yeah.
This is one of 2 that you've marked as ones that, yeah. And actually, I have your pictures. Now, these are large books.
Well, this one is a small one, actually. This is one that came out in '89.
Okay.
And the reason I kind of added both of them here is that when you show the information on the large one and people look it up, they might be overly intimidated. But this is one of his early ones that came out in 1989. The back of it has it shows he's the culinary ambassador, Louisiana's culinary ambassador to the world. And this would have been 1989. This would have been after he cooked in Russia, China. He cooked when Gorbachev and Reagan met, that iconic meeting.
Yeah.
He cooked for Pope John Paul II in the Vatican.
Oh, wow.
So,
okay.
So John had just gotten through this whole tour of the world, if you will. And so this book came out, and it's Evolution of Cajun and Creole. He had put one book out in '84 that was kind of self-published, spiral bound, that you can still find on eBay. But this was probably more the I guess hardback quality. And also around this time is when he started doing his PBS specials. And so if you go and you look at I think it was Louisiana Digital Media, you'll see he has different series from Taste of Louisiana. Is pretty much the title of them all, but a lot of them are centered around his different cookbooks. So the ones he had here are truly Cajun and Creole recipes that encompass, you got white boudin recipes in this one, melitons, the other gumbos, the various gumbos in there. And so that what I remembered first time I saw this one was reading about, I was at my other grandmother's house and she had a copy, and it was fascinating to read about the boucherie and the way, the preservation techniques. So I put this one down because I thought if somebody wanted kind of a introductory book of John Folse to get into, this would be a good one, because it's only, like I said, it's let's see how many pages this is a smaller one. It's 350 pages, but it's easier to get around, and you'll see when the next one that he's gonna show a picture of why I'm recommending this is the light version here.
Yeah, this is the light version.
Not on calories.
Exactly. The next one can be weaponized if necessary.
Yeah.
So that is this book here, the Encyclopedia of Cajun and Creole Cuisine. Yes. So would you consider this to be kind of his, his piece? Like, I forget what the term is, but the representative of what he's become and what he is, what the kinds of things that kind of his signature, I guess. Would you say that this book is that?
Yeah, it's probably a literary embodiment of, I guess, what John Folse stands for, in my opinion.
Right.
following him on other media and knowing him. It is how many pages did I say? It's 840 pages. It's a huge book. It's got big color pictures. And you'll see the picture of how much it weighs that I sent Jeremy in a minute.
Yeah, it's
yeah.
That's
just
just a little over 9 pounds, right? Is that
almost
right?
10? Almost 10
almost
pounds.
10. Oh yeah, I was looking at the scale wrong.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So
wow.
This is so we couldn't have given this to Grandma when Grandma was up in age, because she wouldn't have been able to lift it. But it is a solid book, not just from weight, but with the material in it. The first 120 to 200 pages really detail the history of Louisiana and Louisiana cooking, and he divides it into like the 7 nations that really influenced the culinary scene. Like I said, the French, the Native Americans, the Africans, the English, the Germans, the Spanish, the Italians, and even though the French or the Cajuns fall underneath the French influence, he's got chapters on each of those groups, their history, and the things that they brought to the table, literally, and the styles. And so you have that, and then of course it's divided into appetizers and stocks and the roux and the different ingredients. And then he goes through, like I said, you got the game, the meats, the poultries, the seafoods, the soups, the gumbos, the vegetables, the desserts. And then he even has a section in the back that's even like monthly celebrations and some things. And then there's another section with resources, and this all came out at not really the early ages, but the internet was out, so there's some web links there that may not still be accurate, but hopefully they'll guide you to where to find the most accurate information on it.
Okay.
But this is the first of 4 of these immense books that he's put out. The other 3 are, the one that followed was After the Hunt, which is all about wild game. And it's a similar format, but it detailed the history more of hunting. And a lot of his recipes are repeated through these books. So actually this book has actually got a copy of the original spinach madeleine in it too, by the way.
Huh. Okay.
But so some of the recipes are repeated, but the full colored pictures are just what's really pretty impressive. The next one that came out was Hooks, Lies, and Alibis, and it is all about seafood, and it's not necessarily just about Louisiana seafood, because some of the seafood that it shows there are things you might catch up, some salmon and stuff like that you catch up north, and some of those recipes. And about the time he was putting that book together is the first time I met him and his assistant, Michelle York, and they were looking for pictures to add to the cookbook. So I actually had a picture of my other grandfather from when he was in World War II catching fish on Ascension Island in the Atlantic. So there's a picture of that in the Hooks, Lies, and Alibis book.
Huh.
And then the other one I sent you that weighs a little bit more than this one was the last one he put out, Can You Dig It? And that's all about vegetables. And there are Melitone recipes in those. And but that one is all about the different, mostly Louisiana influenced vegetables that you find grown throughout, but there are some that are outside of there. And actually in this one here, you can see it's over 10 pounds. I actually have a picture. I submitted a picture of my daughters that are in it, as well as 2 of them of my dad, when my dad had his garden in Texas. So those are all, like I said, very solid, both physically and informationally.
That's what I was
books.
saying. They can be weaponized.
Yeah.
They are. Oops. Where are we? Pasted image. There we go. Okay. trying to do this on. I'm literally copying and pasting from your message from this morning. So that's a testament to the software I'm using, Ecamm. So Ecamm's got a special this week, not to prop it up, but they've got 40% off for a lifetime subscription to Ecamm. So if you're looking to do your own podcast, this is a great app to use because
looks like it.
Yeah, for the likes of somebody like me who had absolutely zero broadcast skills going into this, it's been able to help me put this show together. So, and I'll put a link in the description just in case anybody's watching. I'm sure most people are not. They could give a rat's rear end about what we're using to make the show, but just in case. All right, so we got more to go through here. Let's see.
I thought that was how many more we got.
Nope, that's it. That's it.
I thought it was the last one. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank God. Okay. that was. I'm sitting there going, Jesus, and this is the funny part about this is that this is just a subsampling of your sampling, which is a subsampling of everything that's available, which is insane. Yeah. I mean, it's insane. And you know what? There's probably a fair amount of recipes out there that have never been published that that we're missing out on. But, you know, it's like I was saying in the main show, I can't think of another place in the world, such a small place in the world, that has so many culinary styles and just, you know, the diversity of ingredients and the way recipes, you know, it's funny because there is a commonality in a lot of the dishes, that being the roux, but beyond that, everybody's kind of taking it. The theme has always been about living off the land, right? And the early Acadians, the Cajuns, those guys, I mean, you think about how hard it was to settle back then in other parts of the country. And then they come down to the swamps. And you got the heat in the summer and the bitter, you know, kind of bone-chilling cold in the winter. Yeah. So you didn't even get a real winter. You got just cold, right? There was no snow or none of that stuff. You know, people take days off and crap like that. It was, you know, it's just cold. and you know,
cold, yeah.
Yeah, and you know, I think you were saying something in your Melons report that you guys are going to be in the 30s and 40s next week, maybe. Yeah. Man, I'm in the 30s every morning when I wake up. So, and if you go by gumbo season being any time in the 50s or below, that's 9 months out of the year here. So, you know, so it is, you know, these kinds of, and I honestly, I think that's one of the reasons why there's so many people that live up here, because they're trying to get away from some of those things like the heat and the humidity, which there is not really much of either up here. But, you know, it's just crazy to me that, well, I mean, here we are. We're just two dudes that are talking about Cajun lifestyles, Cajun culture, South Louisiana, and of course, food is almost part of every episode. Yeah, and that's not, you know, that's not a. We could build an entire show that could go on for years on all the recipes that exist in Louisiana. And, you know, and following all the culinary trends that are going on, like the Vietnamese king cakes that have taken root, and you know, I got to do this. I have it. So I made my Popeyes spicy mayo. I made it again. Yeah, a little bit more kick this time. And, you know, I'm putting that on my little muffulettas, right? And I'm going to use... So here I am using spicy mayo ghost pepper, olive salad,
Olive salad.
and then all the rest being the traditional ingredients. But I'm happen to be putting it on a kind of fluffy bagel that you get locally here in the Seattle area. So, I mean, right there, that's a take on what was, and it still holds true in terms of the overall flavor profile. It's just the little kick here, or the little change there.
Oh, yeah.
So, I see this evolving. And you think back to what we had, going back to the king cake thing, what we had as king cakes, with Mackenzie's. God, what a sad king cake that was! But we ate the hell out of that thing. Do you know what I'm talking about? They had little half cherries, like there was 4 of them on top, and
I vaguely remembered, because by the time I remembered visiting. We rarely visited during Mardi Gras, because just once again, we're talking about when we were available to go there.
Right.
I think it was like 8th grade. My parents took us for 3 or 4 days, and we actually went to Metairie for the Mardi Gras parade one night. But I do remember getting a piece of king cake at one point, and it wasn't anything special, I guess is what I was going to say.
Right.
So it wasn't like, oh my God, we got to have that. It was just, so I don't remember in detail, but I think I've seen pictures of what you're talking about.
Yeah, if you look up just Mackenzie's king cake, it looks so sad. But it was in popular. It was popular, and it was in demand all the time, every year. Nowadays, the king cakes that come out are just these grandiose things that are just insane. With the cream cheese, with all the different fillings that you can get in them and stuff like that. Anyway, making myself hungry again. Again, this is one of the things that's nice about an episode like this, is that we kind of take a step back from what our normal show format is, and we talk about something that is, when people tune into a Cajun show or a Louisiana show, they expect to hear about cooking, or they expect to hear about a recipe, but we're covering a spectrum of different books that point to all kinds of different recipes.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, you go figure it out. You go do you, and grab one of these books. And you know what? Tell you what, start with the spinach madeleine. If you haven't done it, it's not that hard. The ingredients, I played, in the show, but you can look it up too if you just type in River Road recipes and you type in crawfish. Keep wanting to call it shrimp madeleine, but crawfish, not crawfish. Spinach madeleine. That's my cue to wrap it. But if you look that up, you look up spinach madeleine, you'll find the recipe, and just challenge yourself. And do this. Do me a favor. You can taste it after it comes out of the oven, but put it away in the fridge. Resist one day to eat it, and then eat it the next day, and you will be pleasantly surprised. Much like the muffaladas, this is one of those things. It's actually kind of comical how many dishes from Louisiana taste better the next day. Yeah. It's not that they're bad the first day, but they taste so much better.
Yeah, I mean, and think about when a lot of those came out, there wasn't a lot of refrigeration to begin with, and they probably didn't last more than a day. So imagine how pleasantly surprised everybody got when they started using refrigerators.
Right, exactly. Like, holy crap, this is really good next week. Oh, wow. Yeah, so.
But, and so that's also another testament maybe to the fact that even though I don't mind eating leftovers, some members of my family, young daughters, aren't real big on leftovers. But there are certain leftovers, like you said, that get better with a couple of days in the refrigerator.
Yep.
And even to your point too about the different cookbooks, the just alone, I probably in the 85 books that I had, if I went for just something called seafood gumbo, well hell, if I went for just gumbo, I probably could come up with more than 200, maybe 300 different gumbo recipes.
Sure.
And if you narrow them down to chicken andouille or chicken or just seafood and such, I'd probably still have
a lot,
dozens of different versions of what people are calling seafood or people are calling chicken andouille.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the point about part of the reason, like I said, my interest was the sub-region that we grew up in. As I learned more about that, it was more broader. And then, if you get exposed to some of the people like Leah Chase, you might say, well, I'm just kind of curious, how did she make her, what's so good about her restaurant? Because
Right.
I think maybe it was even Paul Prudhomme that made the comment that, he could have only fit so many butts and seats, maybe not his words, but in a restaurant. So, if you could fit, then you knew how many could you fit in your restaurant at one time?
We were rated, I believe, for either 80 or 100 at our.
So you could, if you could only do, that's at one time, but let's say it was over the course of a night, if you could feed 150, I mean, how many people? That's a small population of where you were operating.
Well, yeah,
and even
yeah,
So, and if you wanted to go to K. Paul's and you couldn't go to K. Paul's, but yet you had the recipes, sure, you may not do it exactly like he does, but if you get some skill under your belt and try it and not be afraid, then you may come up pretty close and say, oh, okay, this is a pretty good way of serving this.
Yep.
So,
yeah.
and of course, now that Chef Paul's passed on and his wife had passed on and the restaurant's closed, you can't even do that anymore. So
That's
this
true.
is the only way.
This is
you
his
find
legacy.
somebody. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I think that I always enjoyed getting these type of books for Christmas. My wife and kids like, y'all just want books. Well, there's inspiration, there's reference in my case that I like to go to. And then there's some things, like I said, it's just kind of neat to take somebody else's take on it.
Sure.
So
sure.
Just got to find the right person who would appreciate these gifts. This will give you some ideas. And if you have any questions or come up with any of you may have different ones that we didn't even touch on that I don't even have in my collection that I'd like to know about. You can send us the email to comment on.
Well, I think the best way to reach us right now is just comment either in Facebook or on YouTube. Just you can add comments after the fact. And if not, you can just email hoodat@rainycajun.com. And that goes to just a mailbox, and be more than happy to read it. And eventually we're going to open this up so that people can come in during the show and talk to us during the show. And I'm really looking forward to doing some new stuff in the new year that'll open this up to even more people. So like your buddy Ben could actually call in and razz you about the Melatonin recipes instead of him just typing out in the Facebook comments. So, all right, well, great. We'll wrap it for this week, and thank you guys for watching either on the replay or watching us live. It's been wow. Well, we still got one day left of the Thanksgiving holiday. Thank God. I think I need one more day to kind of recover, but we'll be back next week with more fun stuff, and what that remains to be seen. We're kind of kicking around some ideas. So again, I'm obligated to do this. Please go ahead and click like and subscribe on YouTube, and then be sure to like us on Facebook. It really helps the channel. It helps us grow. So David, thank you very much. It was good chatting with you.
Ben.
And now I'm gonna go eat some more spinach Madeline.
All right, I'm going to touch on some. I got some of that chocolate pecan pie I got to get onto. So.
Oh, that's right. I got to get pecan pie too. So
you got pecan pie.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right.
See y'all later. Take care.